Hey guys! So, today we are going to talk a little bit about learning. Learning on the job and learning by yourself. So let's get into it. Now, this is going to be a little bit about a subscriber of mine. He reached out actually just today and asked me a great question, apart from of course complimenting me on my nice video, which always is like flattery. Guys, you need to know this. Flattery always works. I'm powerless to resist it. So here I am making the video. Anywho, the question in question was how much time do I personally or in general people spend learning on the job versus as opposed to learning by themselves. And his backstory was kind of interesting. He has been working as a C# developer for a couple of years, and he's noticed something. And he's noticed something that is what I call the end of the rabbit hole. He told me that he has realized that after working for roughly 2 years at this company, that most of what he actually does has very little to do with learning. It's very, very rare that he learns something new about C#, even though he can spend his entire career in theory in C#. He doesn't really spend all that much time innovating or creating new things or getting his skills developed in C#. Rather, he spends more time learning the domain of the company and how the company works, basically how the business works. And when I read that, it made me all fuzzy inside, because I know how that feels. I've been there before, and to my friend, I understand exactly how you feel. And this goes out to the rest of you as well. The end of the rabbit hole, the big secret that nobody's telling you, is that you will one day, when you work long enough at one particular project or one particular company, you will realize that you're not learning anything anymore. You're not learning anything, at least that has to do with software development or your engineering skills. You have become a craftsman of the company. This is what the company wants. The company wants you to have the technical engineering skills that are required in order to develop their business. And the business is the thing that you can always keep on improving. And that's the desire of the company in general. Because there's only so much things that you can learn about software engineering until things start to circle on you. And when that circle starts, generally people behave in two different ways. Either you figure out that, hey, this is pretty okay, and you feel content with understanding that you have reached the level of mastery that you need in order to hold down a job as a software developer, and that you feel content with these skills. This is very normal. A lot of developers I know have this. They have their own social life and they have their different hobbies apart from their job, but that's it. Programming is just a job to them. And then there's this other group of people who hate this, who can't stand that they're not evolving, they're not allowed to play with shiny tools, they're not allowed to grow as engineers, they're pursuing mastership of the craft, if you will. These people can't stand what my friend here was describing. Because when you get that realization that you're not honing your skills anymore, you're only really learning more about the business, then, as I said, you've come to the end of the rabbit hole. There's nothing more for you at that company that will evolve you as an engineer, unless you do it in your own time, which is of course very encouraged by the company, because that's a win-win for them. it's a win-win for everybody, actually. So you have a choice now, and this is what I told my subscriber. You have to ask yourself what's more important to you: to hold down a job and virtually be content where you are, or alternatively, you can start playing around with shiny tools in your spare time, get a little bit inspired maybe, or you can, in theory, and this is what usually I would say happens, is that you play around with shiny tools in your spare time, and either that becomes the end of it and your hobby and your job gets a little bit of double value, or you switch jobs. And I can only tell you that's what I did. Because the thing is that there are things that you can learn in your spare time that you are never ever going to most likely find a job that is going to train you in. That's usually learning higher level concepts, such as things that are very shiny and fresh and cool and trendy and stuff of that nature. It's very tricky some things are very tricky to get a job that touches on. Basically, let's say that you want to do Haskell programming. In theory, you could absolutely find a job that will give you Haskell, but very, very few companies will provide you that type of opportunity. And the same thing goes for all kinds of programming styles and so forth. It kind of depends on your niche, what you find to be interesting. But I find very often that that's very rare. And that's okay for the most part, because what's beautiful about that is that there are a few tools and a few things out there in the world that you don't actually need to work full time with the thing in order to get good at it or for it to bring you happiness and value. But then there are things that you absolutely have to work with. I would say that anything, if you realize that, hey, I'm fed up with, say, C#, for example, and you want to try something different, a new language or something like that, then you should absolutely get a job. Because the fact of the matter is that you will never achieve true mastership in a new language in your spare time. You will maybe get good at it, but you're never ever going to get as good as if you face real-world software. Real-world software and doing something as a full-time job is always going to trump hobby projects on the side. You can, of course, start a startup and start making some money maybe on an idea you have or something like that, but in general this is the way it goes. So let's say that you're interested in Docker, for example, and your company is not using Docker. That's a good thing, because then you can switch jobs, because quite a few companies are using Docker. But as I said, if you're into Haskell, odds are that it's going to be harder for you to find somewhere to work doing something like that. So what you're going to realize next is that this is something, even if you switch jobs, this is a recurring theme. You are constantly going to get to a point where you will learn as much as you can at one job. And then, as I said, you have to ask yourself the question, what is more important to you? So I did this exact thing. And this is what I told the subscriber as well. I've reached a level of experience with front-end development that is enough for me to be able to hold down a front-end position at almost any company. I said that's exactly what I could have done if I wanted to. I could have stayed in JavaScript front-end land and made the most amount of money, but I didn't, because it bored me. And I don't like being bored. That's one thing I can share to you about myself. There is nothing I hate more than being bored. Nothing. So what I did was that I became a junior. Well, not a junior, but I went into a smaller company where I got the opportunity to work with a language that I was not very familiar with. Think of it as having a sabbatical. You don't have to do this for the rest of your life, but I think that it's a very individual thing, what is important to you. There's nothing wrong with staying with one language if programming is not the only thing that you care about. You don't have to be like me. Don't take me as the norm, because I'm not the norm. most regular day programmers are not, and it's fine. You don't have to sacrifice a good job position just to go out and be experimental with something else. That's right for some people. I see that a lot in freelancers and short-term consultants. Those are the type of people who get probably the most exposure to professional level software, the most diverse exposure at least. So if you can relate to my subscriber here and you feel that you've reached that point where you really only learn more and more about the business where you're working, then congratulations, you are now officially so good at software development that there's very little left for you to learn at that company. And now you need to make the choice. Are you happy? Or is it time for a change? Have a great day.